from Kansas State University, this is Agriculture Today. Eric Atkinson here. Here's what's ahead. K-State's Dan O'Brien on the grain markets. He'll talk about what's behind this week's downturn in the wheat market and the ongoing bullishness in the soybean market. He'll also note that local grain basis levels at Kansas delivery points remain in very good shape across the board. Then, visiting with Shelby Varner from the Kansas Agriculture and Rural Leadership Program, Jill Zimmerman will report that applications are now being taken for the Next KARL Class. She'll talk about the long, successful format of this 2-year program and the particulars of the application process. And waiting to talk with us about Kansas agricultural weather, K-State's Chip Redmond. All that next on this Agriculture Today. You're tuned in to the K-State Radio Network and Agriculture Today. Glad to have you along with us once more for the grain market update. First of all, Dan O'Brien is a grain market economist with K-State Research and Extension, and he's along with us again from his office in Colby, northwest Kansas. Quite an active week in the markets, Dan. We'll pick up on that. The wheat market, first of all, though, is, as of the last several trading sessions, in retreat for a number of reasons, apparently.
Some of which, as we're experiencing drought in western Kansas and wondering about or hoping for moisture to come through some of the snowstorms that have come through, that we're sort of incredulous about. But yet, it seems that a lot of the impetus for wheat to move higher had to do with worries about the Black Sea region and conflict between Ukraine and Russia. We read market reports now that even though those threats are still there, it's almost as if the market is calling a bluff on that saying that, well, they're amassing, but there may be other ultimate factors and motivations afoot. So they've sort of not necessarily trusting or thinking that will come about. And as a result, you've seen wheat close yesterday, Kansas City hard red winter wheat at $7.69, still a tremendous price. And new crop wheat at $7.74, but we were up to around $8.50 at the high within the last cycle upwards before we dropped off to about this same area before. Prior to that, we were about $8.70, and prior to that, the high had reached almost $9. So we're really sort of up and down with lower tops and lower bottoms. And all the way through, we've been probably bidding those prices up more based on the potential for impact on U.S. wheat export sales than the reality of it. We've had not too bad of an actual pace of U.S. wheat exports with a little over 14 million bushels for the week ending January the 27th. And when you look at how many total sales and new crop forward sales ahead and shipments altogether come about, well, we're at about 634 million bushels, about 77% of the way to the USDA's projection of 825. Yet, with that WASDE report coming up next week, it's very possible that, and that'll be on Wednesday, the 9th of February, that if there's a number that could get ratcheted back a little bit to some degree, it would be probably the U.S. total wheat export number, and we'll see. I would say, even in light of all that, we did not have that bad of a week of hard red winter wheat exports. Still behind the total pace. We were at, say, 7 million bushels, but still we're 75% of the way to the USDA's projection in terms of total shipments and sales, with about 67% of the market year done. So, it's kind of a neutral, a slightly negative thing. You'd like to see more pace, but I guess when you stand back and look at that bigger picture, it's still geopolitical conflict. And the factor in all of that, and that Russia, Ukraine, China nexus that's going on over there, is that China is a major trading partner with Ukraine. Mm-hmm. And there's something afoot there that, well, you wonder if they want that apple cart upset that badly that the wheat and the corn coming out of Ukraine would be disrupted going to China by Russian actions in that region. Mm-hmm. No doubt China has trading interests, and they're probably concerned about what could occur.
Stay tuned on that. And Dan, before we leave the wheat trade, briefly to note here, and we'll hear more about this with K-State's Chip Redmond joining us to talk the weather in just a second. The snowfall this past week and the previous week created some interest in the wheat market, thinking that maybe that was the drought breaker, but no such animal. The moisture equivalent has been minimal. So that reality will certainly re-enter the market at one point, you would think.
For people in those areas, and we've been having meetings this last week, I and Mark Nelson from Kansas Farm Bureau held Winning the Game workshops, first in Liberal on Monday and then in Leota on Tuesday and then up into Oberlin on Wednesday, right through that snow that was happening on Tuesday, Wednesday. Anyway, the point being that it really was dry down to the south, and folks in that area were really looking forward to hoping for some moisture. Any moisture that would help them to live to fight another day would be greatly accepted. There was in the previous snow some 10 plus inches in the Scott City area, so that was deemed a great thing for those folks. But up in Oberlin, where we were on Wednesday, not much moisture came at all. So anyway, at least moisture is moving through. There's a possibility of better things into the future. But we're now into the first week of February, and we get to the first week of March, it'll be showtime. We either have the moisture to grow or not. And so there's a lot riding on what happens. I would say also, since we're talking about risky issues, that we're now into the month of February, where the USDA charts both the DEES 2022 corn closing average prices, as well as the November soybean closing average prices. And we're looking at prices for corn futures of about 573 for soybeans, about 1392. So I don't think you can say that, quote, help is on the way, but we're going to have some pretty good starting planting prices for corn, for soybeans, for grain sorghum as we come through, and potentially ending prices for hard red winter wheat. Hard red winter wheat right now, the July contract 774, and I think, of course, prior to that month, I believe, I'm not exactly sure, it might maybe in June, I believe, is maybe when they figured that closing average. So we have, at least for crop revenue insurance coverage, the likelihood of some relief coming with these high prices. And really, we're intending to talk about grain outlook. We're talking about crop insurance. That's because things are so dry. They're almost one and the same this year. But questions in people's minds about what level of APH coverage do you buy? If 70 or 75% is what you normally buy, well, yeah, it costs a lot more to move to those higher levels, but they do offer you more revenue coverage. So I think that the breakdown that we've been talking about at these meetings is to look at the extra added revenue protection per bushel that you're paying, not necessarily per acre, per bushel of APH, and then compare that to the extra added cost per bushel of the insurance. And is that an economic trade-off for you that's helpful, especially in a tough year like this?
Things to ponder there. You note the corn market, struggling a little bit of late. The soybean market has been ultra hot. Saying that because this is being reflected some anyway in our local basis levels around Kansas, which, widely speaking, are in pretty good stead, you say.
Yes, generally basis levels for soybeans, since that's kind of where we're talking right now, for soybeans in Colby, in Garden City, Salina, Topeka, all pretty strong, actually, even in southeast Kansas, and actually still strong, not quite as strong as last year in Hutchinson. So soybean base is looking pretty good around the state, which is indicating that, yes, we have whatever problems we're having in supply-demand factors that are driving futures higher, they're not happening elsewhere and ignoring Kansas. Our basis is pretty strong too. So we're participating in some of that at the local level. And of course, we're trading soybean futures on yesterday's close. It's the lead contract. Well, actually, all the way from the March, May, July, August contracts, they're all $15 plus. And we're not even flinching. And a lot of that has to do, of course, with South American dryness that's trying to be digested in the market. You've got some of their agencies, both government and private, coming out with projections that are indicating that the tangible reductions in their productive in their output, and that affects, of course, the soybean market. likely going to affect the corn market. And then you have the odd case in the corn market of, even though prices in China remaining quite high and problems in South America, that there's a cancellation of corn sale happened in the last couple of days. You wonder about all the motivations involved, the cancellations at key times like that. And, give us a month, we'll see what really is occurring.
Yeah. As far as basis for wheat, basis for corn, though, still pretty solid by and large?
Yes, corn basis, Colby, Salina, Topeka, Garden City, Hutchinson, Columbus. In 5 out of those six locations, you've got pretty strong basis. Only one where we have a good basis, but not either at or above the basis levels we've had before would be in Columbus and Southeast Kansas. So you've got some other supply-demand factors coming into play there. Grain sorghum basis, virtually the same story, although we had such strong basis in the first 2 or 3 months of last year that the basis now in Kansas for grain sorghum is the strongest it's been since last year. And this year's is stronger than anything we'd had 2019, 2018, 17, 20, thereabouts. So pretty strong. And as we mentioned, wheat, the strongest wheat basis is in these western areas that are droughty. Tangible separation, markedly higher basis in Colby and Hugoton, again, northwest, southwest Kansas than we'd seen anytime since 2017, but a good basis, about equal with where we'd been in Salina, Topeka, Hutchinson, and a little bit more of a moderated basis again for wheat, just like for corn in Columbus and the southeast part of the state.
All of that, by the way, is summarized in the weekly notes that Dan has pulled together on the grain markets. Have a look at it at agmanager.info. Well, Dan, next week we'll talk again. Appreciate your time.
Thanks, Eric. Take care.
On the grain markets, Dan O'Brien, grain market economist, K-State Research and Extension. We'll be back on Agriculture Today.
Welcome back to Agriculture Today. I'm Shelby Varner. The Kansas Agriculture and Rural Leadership Program has opened up its application for those who want to begin the process of potentially being a part of the Next KARL Class. And in to talk about it today is the president of the KARL program, Jill Zimmerman. Thank you for joining us, Jill.
Yeah, happy to be here. Thanks, Shelby.
So the Kansas Agriculture and Rural Leadership Program is often referred to as the KARL program. What is the KARL program?
Yeah, thanks. So the KARL program was founded in 1989 by Dr. Barry Flinchbaugh and some other folks in the commodity world. And they were very passionate about the need for an agricultural leadership program in Kansas. So fast forward to where we are today, over 30 years later, and we are recruiting for Class 16. And so it's a 2-year program. So we will take applications up until April 1st. Folks will apply. We will interview. And so it's a tuition-based 2-year program, and they will spend, the applicants or those that are selected for the class will commit to spend 2 years on the road traveling throughout the state of Kansas. There will be study tours to Washington, D.C., Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, a domestic study tour. The current class went to Lincoln, Nebraska, and then there will also be an international study component. So it consumes about 52 days over the course of those 2 years, and we study issues that are agriculture-related, rural communities, leadership, and just a good blend of things that impact us today.
A lot of learning going on. What is the purpose of it all?
Purpose of KARL is to create a more engaged individual. So, and those more engaged individuals can take action, and whether that's at home in their personal lives, in their communities, in their field of study, in their jobs, you create this awesome network of people through a set of experiences, dynamic experiences that are very impactful.
So what would you say are some of the qualifications for a person who is looking to apply?
You want people who care. You want people who are service-minded. You want people who desire to make our homes and our communities and agriculture a better space for us to live and work. Kansas is growing. There's a ton of opportunities for agriculture right now, and we need to embrace those opportunities. And by creating a network of folks through a set of learning experiences, it's a really exciting time for us.
Great program to be a part of, to get the possibility to be a part of. What is the process of actually getting to be a part of the KARL program?
Applications are available online, karlprogram.com, and through that there's an application process. If you're currently employed, you will need your current employer to sign off on your ability to participate. We'll need references, and then there's an application process. And through completing that application, they're all due April 1st, all of those materials. We will interview the first week of May, applicants that are selected for interviews, and then those will be announced at some point in May, with the formal announcement being June 4th here in Manhattan, Kansas.
How many participants does a class hold?
So a class holds up to 30 individuals, and we really want to make sure that diversity to that class, so that when we engage in conversations about our rural spaces, about education, about healthcare, agriculture, that you really have a good mix of people to have that conversation. So up to 30 people.
What excites you about being the president, but also being a former participant of the KARL program?
Yes, Shelby, I was in Class 5, and fast forward to 2017 when I had the opportunity to come work for KARL. KARL was a difference maker for me in my path in life, and it really creates a network of awesome people who just care and want to make where we live and work a better place. And so you get to bring all of these people together. You get to introduce the class to maybe folks that they've not met, but we get to engage in conversations about how to make things better. And so it really excites me, is building all of that and then identifying folks to help support us along the way. It's really about creating a culture of people that care.
What is your biggest recommendation for those who are thinking about applying for this upcoming KARL class?
My biggest recommendation, Shelby, we often hear from folks, I don't have the time, right? And it's easy for us to feel that way, but I've not heard of anyone once they've been through the experience that they have regretted it, right? Regretted taking that time away from their family, their farms, or their daily lives. Because I think the impact of the value that we gain from the experience it's overwhelming. And you can ask probably anybody in this current Class 15. It's been a life changer for them, and there's zero regrets in terms, I would say, for any of them. And so oftentimes we hear the question about the time. That's a huge time commitment. It is. And you have to build your base at home to make sure that you can be gone. Our seminars are usually always start on a Wednesday at noon, and they're done on a Friday at noon, except for our international study, Washington, D.C. Those would be exceptions. And so I think once they get and they build those networks of people, it pays dividends for life.
You mentioned the international trip, and every class has gotten to participate in one, and this next class is getting close to theirs. What's the purpose or the intent of them traveling internationally?
So it's really kind of the capstone to the whole experience. You know, as you think about the places that we've toured, the places that we've studied, and the people that we've met. Our world is really a global world. I like to think of it, the word glocal. I don't know where I heard that term a long time ago, but at a local level, we're really a global society. And so traveling somewhere that doesn't speak the same language as we, use the same currency, but yet are trade partners for the United States and most importantly Kansas, just really brings that experience back home. And when KARL started 30 years ago, many times the participants hadn't had an opportunity to travel internationally. Fast forward to today, most people have had at some point an opportunity to travel internationally, but it still helps provide that scope of work and that scope of life of how this impacts the work that I do at home.
Where do people find out more information about the KARL program?
So you can follow us on the World Wide Web, karlprogram.com. We also are on Facebook and Instagram, but you'll want to search for KARL Program.
Is there anything new that's going to be happening for the class of 16?
Yeah, so that's a great question, Shelby. One thing that is new for the KARL program is traditionally we've held a graduation and an announcement event for each class, and they're separate events. The board of directors and the committees thought what better way to enhance the network, the value of the KARL network, but to make one grand event. So on Saturday, June 4th, we will congratulate the current class 15 while at the same time making an announcement for class 16. And our hope is that it'll really just intensify the bonds and the relationships in the network that is formed with the class.
Sounds like a great time for people to just meet more people who want to be change makers in their community.
Absolutely. It'll be at the K-State Alumni Center, and we've already set in motion we've got some cool surprises that'll come along with that event. And so even if you're a KARL Fellow, a current associate, or a supporter or a friend of the program, we really encourage everyone to attend if possible.
So at the graduation of Class 15 and the announcement of 16, you said anyone who's been a part of the KARL program or associated with it is invited to come. How many people could that be?
So we have the KARL program is blessed with over 440 folks that have been through the program. And then if you look at past board members and folks of that nature, so the KARL network is greater than 500 plus when you add in former board members and alumni of the program. And then friends and supporters, it's huge. And so we hope that we're going to have some special guests that evening, but we're not able to quite share that information yet. But it's a great group of people, and so we're just looking forward to interviewing and our next group of applicants.
So when is that deadline for those who want to apply and have the potential to join this outstanding network, and where do they find out more information?
So they find more information at karlprogram.com, and so the applications are now available. They became available January 1st, and that application period will stay open till April 1st. If they have more questions or anything like that, karl@ksu.edu is a great email that'll get our whole team and your point of contacts for folks to answer those questions. So karl@ksu.edu with any questions that you have, and you're always welcome to call.
Applications are now open for those who would potentially like to be a part of the 16th class in the KARL program. Applications are due April 1st. For more information about it, go to www.karlprogram.com. Thank you, Jill, for coming in.
Appreciate it.
That was the president of the Kansas Agriculture and Rural Leadership Program, which is based at Kansas State University, Jill Zimmerman. You can support KARL with your contributions as it is a nonprofit. When you support KARL financially, you're investing in a strong future for Kansas, rural communities, and agriculture. You're equipping up-and-coming leaders with insight, tools, and connections to solve rural prosperity obstacles and take advantage of game-changing opportunities. If you would like to find out more about contributing to the KARL program, just go to www.karlprogram.com. I'm Shelby Varner, and we will be back with more on Agriculture Today.
Welcome back to this Agriculture Today. Time set aside here to bring you up to the moment on the Kansas agricultural weather scene. And joining us from the road once again is K-State Research and Extension meteorologist Chip Redmond. Chip, as we visited last week, we were anticipating this snow event to move in this week, which it did, Tuesday night into Wednesday morning. Widespread, but there were still locations reportedly that went wanting for moisture.
Yeah, most of north central Kansas missed the moisture, and portions of southwestern Kansas, too, didn't see a whole lot. So it was mostly a dry snow. It's pretty cold in the upper levels of the atmosphere, and that really helped for a fluffy snow, similar to what we saw last week. So it blew around a lot more, which makes it really hard to measure. However, a widespread around 1/10 of an inch for most of northeast, south central, and western Kansas. The far southeast saw a little bit more precipitation. They also got some rain, too, before it gets over to snow. So some helpful moisture, but the folks in the north central definitely missed out.
Yeah. Now, the latest drought monitor doesn't account for this week's snows. It does for last week's snowfall. Was there any sort of improvement at all in this week's monitor compared to the previous week?
There was actually that narrow corridor of snow that fell from roughly Burlington to Scott City had as much as 1 inch of moisture in it. When you get 27 inches of snow, that's a lot. When that melts down, it came down to about 1 inch to a half inch. So we were able to knock back a little bit of the severe drought conditions in Scott County, as well as southern Sherman and northern Wallace County. We saw some improvement. That was a localized area, unfortunately, or fortunately for them, but unfortunately for the rest of the state. We did see expansion of the extreme drought as well as severe drought in Southwest, especially in Ashland to Barber counties. And we also saw additions of abnormally dry along the Kansas River from Manhattan to Topeka, as well as the southern Flint Hills, and even some severe drought and moderate drought expansion in the far southeast. So those areas that didn't see moisture, just little areas of degraded conditions. Thankfully, those areas did see some moisture this week. That will not be accounted for until next week's drought monitor. We're timing these snow events wrong.
Yeah, absolutely. Colder temperatures as well that accompanied this week's system. As we look at the outlook, it appears that these colder readings are going to give way to warmer conditions as we move into the weekend and then beyond.
Yeah, we'll have the cold conditions hang out for the rest of Friday and even into early Saturday, especially where snow sticks around. That snow is going to really impact our temperatures where there is some. Like north central Kansas should warm up quite a bit into early next week with even the 50s and 60s. You know, the good thing is we have been cooler, and that's kept our moisture demands low. Mm-hmm. But the bad news is we're going to be warming up into next week as well as with no moisture. And so right now the new monthly outlooks came out for February, and they have us in equal chances of moisture as well as kind of in the barrier between the colder air to the north and the warmer air to the south right now.
Mm. So equal chances are better than less than normal chances if one looks at the glass half full there. Is that a fair description?
Yeah, it means there's a chance of normal conditions above or below normal. There's just no trend either way, but it is much better than what we could potentially see with either significantly swaying either way. There's a lot of uncertainty with this kind of pattern. We've seen a lot of roller coaster temperatures, mm-hmm. and we will have periods of warmer and periods of colder that are going to average out most likely around normal for the month of February.
Chip, thanks for stepping aside from your duties on the road there to visit with us. Next week we'll talk again. Appreciate your time.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Chip Redmond, meteorologist with K-State Research and Extension. Thanks for listening, and a good weekend to you. Eric Atkinson for Agriculture Today over the K-State Radio Network.